Welcome back to the ACE-CPT exam prep series. This is lesson 11. We're in the domain of program design and implementation. And today, we're talking about cardiorespiratory training, specifically how to program it and how to progress it over time. Here's the question this lesson answers. How do you match cardio training methods and intensity monitoring to whatever phase a client is currently in? We'll walk through the 3 training phases, why Zone 1 does most of the heavy lifting, even for advanced clients, and the rule that keeps every progression safe, the 10% rule. Let's look at what you'll be able to do by the end of this lesson. There are 4 objectives. First, you'll be able to describe what programming looks like within each cardiorespiratory training phase. Second, you'll explain why most training volume, even for well-trained clients, stays in Zone 1. Third, you'll describe how interval work-to-recovery ratios progress as a client gets fitter. And fourth, you'll be able to state the 10% rule and apply it to real programming decisions. Keep the 10% rule in the back of your mind especially. It shows up again and again on the exam, and it's the thread that ties this whole lesson together. Let's zoom out first and look at programming by phase at a high level. There are 3 phases, and each one builds directly on top of the last. Nothing gets removed, things just get added. In base training, all the work happens in Zone 1. The focus here is simply duration and frequency, how long and how often. In fitness training, Zone 1 work continues, but now you start layering in Zone 2 intervals, performed at or above a landmark called VT1. And in performance training, you add Zone 3 intervals, at or beyond VT2, stacked on top of the Zone 1 and Zone 2 work that's already there. Notice the pattern. It's additive. Each phase keeps everything from before and adds one more layer of intensity on top. Now, let's break down what programming actually looks like inside each of those 3 phases. In base training, everything stays in Zone 1, and it stays below what's called the talk test threshold, meaning the client can still hold a conversation while working. The goal is to build session length toward 20+ minutes, 3 to 5 days a week. It's not about intensity here, it's about consistency and duration. In fitness training, you introduce Zone 2 intervals, performed at or above VT1. This is where real interval structure starts to enter the program. And in performance training, you add Zone 3 intervals, at or beyond VT2, layered on top of everything that came before. So as clients move through these phases, the program doesn't reset, it accumulates. This slide addresses something that surprises a lot of new trainers. Even clients who are training specifically for endurance performance, think runners, cyclists, triathletes, still spend the large majority of their weekly training volume in Zone 1. That includes warm-ups, cool-downs, recovery days, and easy, steady-state work. Why does this matter? Because a large aerobic base is what actually allows the body to absorb and recover from the harder sessions. Without that base, the higher intensity Zone 2 and Zone 3 work simply can't be sustained. The client breaks down instead of adapting. So Zone 1 isn't the easy, unimportant part of the program. It's the foundation everything else depends on. Now let's talk about how interval training actually progresses over time, and the rule that governs how fast you're allowed to push it. Interval progression typically starts with an easier work-to-recovery ratio, something like 1 to 2, meaning for every minute of work, the client gets 2 minutes of recovery. As fitness improves, that ratio tightens, moving toward a more demanding 1-to-1 ratio, where work and recovery time become equal. And running underneath all of that, across every single phase, is the 10% rule. Don't increase any exercise variable, duration, distance, interval length, or intensity by more than roughly 10% from one week to the next. This isn't a base training only guideline. It's a general progression guardrail that applies across all 3 phases, every time you're deciding how much to add. Let's make the 10% rule concrete with a worked example. Picture a client who starts at 20 minutes of Zone 1 cardio in week 1. That's the baseline, so there's no change yet. By week 2, duration increases to 22 minutes. That's a 10% bump from 20. Jump ahead to week 4, and duration has grown to 26 minutes. Again, roughly a 10% increase from where it was. And by week 6, it's up to 32 minutes, another 10% step forward. Notice the shape of this progression. Small, steady increases, not big jumps. That's the whole point of the rule. It protects the client from doing too much too soon. One more practical note on this slide. When you're combining cardio and resistance training in the same week, sequence the sessions based on the client's primary goal. And remember that recovery capacity is shared across both. You can't just stack maximum effort in each without accounting for total fatigue. Let's test this with a practice question. What is the primary programming focus during base training? Here are your options. Option 1, Zone 3 interval work. Option 2, increasing session duration and weekly frequency, entirely within Zone 1. Option 3, VT2 testing. Option 4, maximal strength testing. Take a moment to think it through. The correct answer is option 2, increasing session duration and weekly frequency, entirely within Zone 1. Here's why. Base training keeps all of the client's work inside Zone 1, and the programming focus is squarely on building up duration and how often the client trains, not on adding intensity. Zone 3 work, VT2 testing, and strength testing all belong to later phases or different domains entirely. Here's your second practice question. What gets added to programming when a client progresses into fitness training? Let's look at the options. Option 1, Zone 3 intervals at or beyond VT2. Option 2, Zone 2 intervals at and above VT1. Option 3, 1-rep max testing. Option 4, sports skill assessments only. Take a moment to think it through. The correct answer is option 2, Zone 2 intervals at and above VT1. Here's why. Fitness training is the phase where Zone 2 intervals get introduced, specifically performed at and above the client's VT1 heart rate. Zone 3 work at VT2 doesn't come in until performance training, and 1-rep max testing and sports skill assessments aren't part of cardiorespiratory programming at all. Let's bring this lesson together with the key takeaways. Base training stays entirely in Zone 1. Fitness training adds Zone 2 work at and above VT1, and performance training adds Zone 3 work at and beyond VT2. Each phase builds on top of the one before it. Even advanced, high-performing clients still spend most of their training volume in Zone 1. It's the aerobic base that makes the harder work possible. Interval work-to-recovery ratios progress over time, moving from an easier 1-to-2 ratio toward a more demanding 1-to-1 ratio as fitness improves. And the 10% rule limits how quickly any exercise variable can increase from one week to the next, and it applies across all 3 phases, not just base training. Hold on to these. They connect directly to how you'll build out full programs in the coming lessons. That's a wrap on Lesson 11. In Lesson 12, we're closing out this domain with a full worked case study, one that pulls together everything we've covered from Lesson 5 all the way through Lesson 11 and shows the ACE-IFT model in practice from start to finish. It's a great chance to see how all these pieces fit together in a real scenario. See you in the next lesson.